Hey guys, it's Jack here, and today we're going to be talking about Bartolomeo from One Piece. Now, there's going to be massive spoilers for the most recent chapter, chapter 1126, so if you don't want to be spoiled, then click off now, because we're going to be getting into it all immediately. But, in the most recent chapter, it wasn't as heavy-handed as the last few, where Oda has been dropping bombshell after bombshell, but my biggest takeaway from this chapter was the demonstration of loyalty that Bartolomeo showed Luffy. A level of loyalty that I don't think's matched other than Bon Clay from Impel Down. I reckon the two are on par. Now, Bon Clay's one's probably more impactful because it's literally allowing Luffy and all his allies to escape, while Bartolomeo's most recent, display that we see is more like it's saving Luffy's life in a way, but Luffy's life was never in jeopardy to begin with. So it's less powerful, I will say, but the actual show of loyalty, I reckon, is on par with Bon Clay's, which is saying something. But before we get into that, let's just quickly go over a little bit of the details of Bartolomeo's character. So we know that he was there in Logtown when Luffy was going to be executed by Buggy, if you remember correctly. Now, we never see him on screen, we get this in flashbacks, but when Luffy is where he's going to be executed by Buggy, Buggy's bringing the sword down to decapitate Luffy, and what happens? A raging bolt of lightning comes down, pierces the execution stand. Luffy, being rubber, survives and gets away scot-free. And Bartolomeo sees this and he gets expired. I feel like I do that a lot. He gets inspired by Luffy to set out on to the seas. Luffy is essentially his version of Shanks to Luffy. A little bit less paternal and a little bit more godsummer, essentially, because he is incredibly devoted to Luffy. There's a running gag in the community of who kind of loves Luffy more, whether or not it's Boa Hancock or whether or not it's Bartolomeo. But that's one of the real great things that Oda manages to do. He takes very kind of silly characters, whether it's personalities or appearances, characters like Bon Clay, Bartolomeo, Senor Pink from Dressrosa. He gives these characters these weird designs, but then makes them some of the most heart-wrenching, beautiful characters in the entire show. It's a testament to Oda's writing skill that he's able to gather his audience's respect and just admiration for characters that on the surface wouldn't seem compelling. And he nails that with perfection with Bartolomeo. So he gets inspired by Luffy and he sets out onto the seas. He eventually meets Luffy for the first time in Dressrosa. This is where we get his first on-screen introduction. He's a combatant in the Colosseum battles. And he actually kind of, in terms of from a writing standpoint, a cinematography standpoint, he really does take the show. When he first gets introduced, he's the most compelling character out of everyone in the Battle Royal, in my opinion. More than Burgess, more than Bellamy, more than Cavendish, more than Rebecca. Because he's this rogue delinquent type character that's not taking anything seriously. He's whipping out his dick and he's pissing off the stage that they're fighting on. He's throwing fake explosives into the crowd. He is essentially the personification of chaos. And you're watching this thinking, oh my god, who the hell is this guy? Is he an enemy? Is he an ally of Doflamingo? Is he an ally of another pirate captain that we just haven't seen yet? But we find out, no, he's none of these things. He's the exact opposite, actually. And he's here to meet up with Luffy. But unfortunately, he's all shy and demure when it comes to Luffy because he's his idol. He kind of channels that the love interest, the childhood friend of the MC, shyness. He's channeling all of his inner Hinata, if you get what I mean. And he kind of is probably the biggest supporting character in Dressrosa to the Straw Hats in terms of the utility and the protection that he brings, not just Luffy, but the crew. Because Luffy might be like his main idol, his god summer, but that loyalty also extends to the crew because those are people that Luffy holds dear, so he's going to protect them. And I don't know if this was deliberate on Oda's part or if it just worked out this way, but great symbolism, in my opinion, of Bartolomeo's power. We know that he has the barrier fruit. He can control barriers, make barriers that can't be penetrated no matter what. And is that not just the perfect ability for someone that wants to kind of use their power for someone else? Because he's essentially the ultimate shield for the Straw Hats. All that love that he has for them is essentially channeled into his power. He isn't the shield that guards the realms of men. He's the goddamn shield that guards the Straw Hats. And he demonstrates this in Dressrosa. He helps Robin out against Cavendish, where he goes alter ego against Gladius, I believe his name is, the Dressrosa executive that can like pop things and make them explode. He stands in front of the what's going to be referred to as the Grand Fleet and chucks up a barrier to freaking try and stop Fujitora. The man is fearless when it comes to protecting his friends. Friends is a strong word because Bartolomeo has a bit of self-esteem issues when it comes to the Straw Hats. He doesn't necessarily think he's worthy to be considered friends of theirs, let alone Luffy. So he kind of considers himself more of someone that needs to earn their respect, not realizing that by helping them out how he has been, he's already gained their respect. But he goes on to join the Grand Fleet. I believe he holds position number 2. I believe Cavendish is number 1. That should have been flipped. Cavendish is a good character, but Bartolomeo should have been number 1. And after that, we don't see much from him after the Grand Fleet was formed. We find out that his ship is like the Going Luffy. It's a Luffy figurehead, which is very, very on the nose. But with how Luffy loves to sit on the figureheads of his ships, it does work. And it brings us to, because we're going to talk about his power a little bit and what I think might happen with him in the future. But it brings us to what's happening in the current day manga. The most recent chapter, like I said, chapter 1126. Because if you remember correctly, a while ago, he goes to Elbath. I don't actually think it's Elbath. He goes to one of Shanks' territories and he burns down the Redhead flag. The Redhead flag? The Redhead Pirates Jolly Roger is a better way to put it. He burns it down and what happens? Well, Shanks shows up because he can't allow that disrespect to happen. And he's kind of got, like, he would have been able to take down Bartolomeo's crew quick smart. We saw what he did to goddamn Kid, and as much as I like Bartolomeo, he's not at Kid's level of power. He would have got stomped by Shanks. And Shanks is like looking at him, he's like glaring at him, he's giving him like his emperor face. And he's talking about how we can't let this stand. You have shamed my authority, and while Shanks isn't someone that cares so much about his own image, when it comes to his image in protection of the people that are under his care, he takes that deathly serious. Because if he allows these like upstart pirates to come and disrespect his territory, it's going to make other pirates more emboldened to do the same, which can potentially lead to the loss of life of the people that he's governing, essentially. So he does need to do something. Like, we know that Shanks is laid back and he's a pretty chill guy, but he needs to show the world that he's at least doing something to rectify this. And to do that, he gives Bartolomeo an ultimatum, essentially. He gives him a vial of poison. And he's like, you go make sure that you get that you make sure, essentially, that you get Luffy to drink that. Shanks is telling Bartolomeo to poison Luffy. Now, we know that Shanks doesn't want Luffy to die. Bartolomeo, though, doesn't know that. And that's the most pressing thing here. Because the way Bartolomeo's probably looking at it is that Bartolomeo knows that Shanks knows that he's a part of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, meaning he thinks that Shanks is probably looking at this as an attack from Luffy, and that's why Shanks is, ordering Bartolomeo to kill Luffy, to kill his commander. And what does Bartolomeo do here? Does he try bargain with Shanks? Does he try get around it some way? Because we know he would never try and poison Luffy. But does he try and barter for his crew's life? Does he try and barter for his own life? Please reconsider Shanks Summer. I'll do anything else, but don't make me hurt Luffy. He doesn't plead or anything like that. He just grabs the vial and chugs it immediately with absolutely no hesitation. Because he's not going to be the catalyst of Luffy's downfall. He's not even going to be the potential catalyst of it. He is not going to allow that disrespect on the man who he considers his idol to stand. And he takes the burden on himself. He sacrifices himself for Luffy. And he's drinking it down. His crew's all worried about him and stuff like that. He's kind of comforting his crew, and he realizes kind of comically that nothing's happening. I'm not going Joffrey at the Purple Wedding. What's going on? And it's revealed that Shanks had no intention of poisoning Luffy, and Bartolomeo and his crew are free to leave. Which we'll get back onto Bartolomeo in a sec, but real quick with Shanks, a real great scene about Shanks laughing. And I believe it was Yasop or one of the other top 3 commanders mentioned, boss, what's so funny? And he talks about his show of loyalty without any hesitation to Luffy just filled me with joy, essentially. He likes seeing that Luffy's able to inspire such loyalty in people that aren't even his direct subordinates. And I think Shanks would probably be feeling a lot of pride in seeing how far Luffy's come. It's one thing to grow exceptionally powerful. It's another thing to have the charisma and character to not just bring people under your wing like a Blackbeard, but to have so much charisma that they're not just wanting to join you, willing to die for you. So I imagine Shanks was feeling a lot of pride in that moment. But Yasop kind of points out that, we've let them go, but, they need to be punished somehow. And he fires his sniper, and the whole ship explodes. How that happened, that's a future video when we can go into the redhead pirates and potential powers and stuff like that. But that's the last scene that we see of Bartolomeo. His ship sinking to the ocean. And it's I know, the way Yasop was talking, he wasn't trying to kill Bartolomeo, but did he just kill him? He's a devil fruit user. Is he just going to sink to the bottom? I'm sure there's someone on his crew that can save him. They're pretty far out, but I imagine some of them are strong swimmers. But let's kind of just go back to what Bartolomeo was willing to do for Luffy. And why I was comparing it to Bon Clay. Because we know that in Impel Down, when they're doing their escape mission, Bon Clay realizes that someone is going to have to stay behind and allow the others to flee. And with his power, he's the best choice to do it. And he shares a lot of similarities with Bartolomeo in his self-esteem. Because Bon Clay's feeling very down on himself because he kind of let Luffy fight Magellan by himself. He doesn't consider himself a worthy friend to Luffy at the moment. Even though he shouted himself hoarse, he ripped his throat open cheering Luffy on, giving him the support that he needed. I've said before in a past video, I 100% guarantee that, not the author, but I'm guaranteeing this, guys, that if he wasn't there to support Luffy when Luffy was going through all the changes in his body to fight off Magellan's poison thanks to Ivankov, if he wasn't cheering Luffy on, Luffy would have died there. Luffy needed to hear Bon Clay's support, in my opinion. And so even though he's kind of, Bon Clay has repaid that debt that he thinks he owes Luffy for, holding back and letting Luffy fight Magellan himself, he's made up for it just with those actions, in my opinion. And in what I imagine Luffy's opinion as well. But he doesn't see it that way, the same way Bartolomeo doesn't see it. And he sacrifices himself, he stays behind, and he allows the others to flee. And he has a stare down with Magellan, and I don't reckon he's dead, but, you know, we know Magellan's beat him, and he's thrown him in one of the... Level 6, I'm assuming. He didn't get to 100 million berry bounty, Bon Clay that is, but with his role in the escape, I definitely reckon he's probably in level 6 at the moment. And a Bon Clay escape teaming up with Bartolomeo and Hancock as like the trio of just Luffy obsessed idiots, which I say so lovingly, would be so great to see. But Bartolomeo shares that self-esteem issues, and that's probably another reason why he was so quick to accept the poison. Not just because of his sheer loyalty, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to downplay that. What he did there, the selflessness of that just can't be stated just how profound that is. But a lot of it also is probably coming down to the fact that he thinks he's so... how he can help Luffy is so limited that he's willing to throw his life away so easily because he doesn't think that he can provide any better support for Luffy. If I'm going to go out this way, I'm going to go out protecting Luffy, not realizing that his worth, Bartolomeo, is much more important to Luffy being alive, being able to continually protect him from attacks, being able to continually support Luffy, like Bon Clay would with his moral support. We know that Bartolomeo, Bon Clay, and Hancock are three characters that are just unconditionally... I don't want to say in love, because that just makes it sound a little bit silly, unfortunately, but unconditionally loyal to Luffy. And they all like that for different reasons, but Luffy's been able to garner their respect, and they're mediums that are just unwaveringly loyal to Luffy. And that's not necessarily, that's not me being like, oh, they're so much better than the other Straw Hats. It's just a difference. And a good example would be Usopp. We know that Usopp and Luffy have a falling out. Same with Sanji, same with Nami, same with Robin. Luffy often has falling outs with his friends. It doesn't make the friendships any weaker. If anything, it heightens them because they handle the disagreements that they have and then they overcome it, which you don't often see in anime, I will point out. Most of the time, the problem comes before the friendship is settled and then the problem happens. Of course, there are exceptions, like with Naruto and Sasuke, for instance. But most, I feel like, are more Goku and Vegeta, where they're like enemies, but then they come together. And Luffy, with his Straw Hat crew, is the Sasuke and Naruto route of it all. They're friends, but then something will happen and they'll have to overcome it. And that's great writing as well. Like I said, it's a very powerful relationship. But on the flip side of it, the Bon Clay, Bartolomeo, and Hancock, well, Hancock was an enemy to begin with. So was Bon Clay technically, but it was less of a serious enemy, we should say. And because he was kind of friends with them in Alabasta, if you guys remember correctly, as they were escaping. But all three of them will just always be there for Luffy whenever he needs them. If he calls upon them, they'll be there within a blink of an eye. Of course, if Bon Clay could, he's behind bars. And that's a type of support that Luffy really needs. He needs both ends of the spectrum. And it's why a character like Jinbei is my favorite character out of the Straw Hats. He's probably my favorite character that isn't a villain. And the reason I say that is because Jinbei provides not just physical support, which he's shown many times with how he saved Luffy, but emotional support. And he's always kind of like an anchor to Luffy in a way that is different than Zoro, because Zoro does this as well. Don't think I'm like shitting on Zoro here. But Jinbei does it in a more paternal way than Zoro does. And in my opinion, once again, great symbolism from Oda. He is a great fit for a helmsman because he helps direct Luffy in the path that he needs to go. Not on the straight and narrow, obviously, pirate duh, but on the path of not letting your own not so much insecurities, but your own pain and grief weigh you down. He's kind of Luffy's support there. Him and Nami, the great symbolism I'm talking about. The Navigator and the Helmsman being two of the most important characters in directing Luffy, and not in a controlling manner, but just giving him the perspectives that he needs to hear. And characters like Bartolomeo are a big part of other perspectives that Luffy doesn't necessarily need to hear, but that he needs to know will always be behind him. And I thought Bartolomeo filled this out perfectly, and I thought his sacrifice, he didn't actually die, but that's what he was doing. He was sacrificing himself for Luffy. I thought that was really, really well done by Oda. And I just loved seeing it because I reckon it added a lot more to Bartolomeo's character. Because it really was the definition of, alright, you've been speaking big about your loyalty to Luffy. Now it's time to shut up and put your money where your mouth is. And he does it instantly. There's no hesitation, there's no doubt, there's nothing. If he needs to die for Luffy, he will. He's his protector, and he's going to do anything in his power to ensure that Luffy becomes the Pirate King. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about Bartolomeo. A little bit of a shorter video than usual, and probably not as much heavy content as sometimes we go into on this channel. But it was my favourite part about the last chapter, so I really wanted to go into it with you guys. If I'm looking really tired and disheveled at the moment, it's because I am. I was planning on doing this video tomorrow because I was so tired. But I haven't gotten a video out to you guys in 4 or 5 days, so I'm like, nah, Jack, just sit down, do it, get it out to everyone. Once again, guys, I'm so sorry. It probably won't be any pictures in this one. I've also promised a Giselle video from Bleach coming up. Don't think I have forgotten about that. That is in the pipeworks. I might be doing a Garp video next though, because Garp was supposed to be scheduled in for this video, but then the stuff with Bartolomeo happened and I chucked that in. So I might go Garp and then Giselle, but that's the schedule. So if you guys love Bleach content, make sure to subscribe. If you want to hear more One Piece content, once again, subscribe. Like the video if you like the video. And guys, I've been Jack Cypher. It's been a pleasure deciphering Bartolomeo, and I'll see you in the next video.